Hey everyone, it's Jake. This is the men's weekly mental health check in, as it says in the thumbnail. If you saw the thumbnail, this is establishing clear roles in the relationship, the importance of it, because that really sets the stage moving forward in your relationship. So far as you all know, y'all know what your role is. It's clear cut, it's clear as day. Now those roles can, it's malleable a little bit. You can switch them around. It's not roles. It's not confined. The roles are not confined to just household chores, right? Or budgeting, like some only one per. No, no, no. That's not what I mean. There are different facets to the roles that men and women play in the relationships, and especially for us men, because this is the men's weekly mental health check-in. We are not very we're not very good at establishing at really at really setting the tone for what our roles should be in the relationship, or what we would like our roles to be, rather, not should be, but we'd like our roles to be. There's a lot of times I know a lot of guys that just kind of go with the flow. I myself have been one of those guys. I am one of those guys sometimes where it's just, whatever she wants. It's better to just, it's better not to make waves of something like that. She wants to do that. That's whatever. That's fine. When in reality, it's like, okay, this is a chance for you to step up as a man. Just take a little bit of control, not take control of every aspect, but just take a little bit of control during certain situations and really set the tone and set the stage. Obviously, y'all are going to talk about it, but this, although you may see differently about some aspects or some roles, that y'all will eventually come to an agreement. It'll be a little uncomfortable at first because it feels like you're arguing, but what you're really doing is you're setting boundaries. Okay? It's like, we're not crossing this line. This is where, or you learn to say no. We as men, I don't think the majority of men are very good at saying no. I really don't think that is the case. So if you're here for it, if this is you, not every man is like this, but if this is you, then welcome. If you're new, welcome. If you're a lady watching this, if you're a woman watching this, and you glean some sort of information, maybe you have an aha moment, and maybe something that I'm talking about. And let me tell you this right now, I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not any of those things. I'm not a life coach. Just a guy going through a few obstacles and just kind of talking about a little bit about what I've learned, some of the tools that I've used to get out of my own head, out of my depression, anxiety, and stuff. And full disclosure, I the past month and a half or so, maybe 2 months, I've just been a little bit out of it. Uh, I kind of regressed a little bit. I got in my own head, and that's somewhere you don't want to be. And it took me a little while to get out of it. So and now we're here today. We moved into a new house, and there's no curtains up, and this is the sunroom. So there's a glare. I can see it on the right side of my face, but we're gonna make do. I've recorded this probably twice, and it's changed every single time. But here, third time is the charm, hopefully. So we're gonna talk about clearly defined roles. The romantic relationships a dance. And relationships in general are a dance, and establishing clear roles, like I said before, setting boundaries, and the linchpin in all this is they all come together, but this I think is probably the most important. And I've harped on this pretty hard, and on and on myself too. And there's sometimes I can't get over this hurdle, but fostering effective communication. That's the third in that trifecta of those are the key elements that contribute to the health and the longevity of your partnership. I mean, that's really, what it is. For us men in particular, navigating these aspects can be challenging, challenging insofar as a lot of times, and I don't know, this isn't, like I said, I'm not going to throw a blanket statement, but generally, for the most part, men men like the peace. Men like peace. I thought I thought I turned the volume off on this thing. It's all in real time. I'm not going to edit any of this. It's going to be on the podcast. It's going to be on the YouTube channel. So bear with me. Men. I don't know if this is if this has been what if this is kind of from has come from society. This is something I'm not gonna. There's no data on this for me anyway. I didn't look too deep into this, but in general and for me, I like peace. There are too many things, in my opinion, in this world that, and especially in today's political, socioeconomic, uh, social media climate, there's too many things that are distracting, and there's too many things that are there to trigger you emotionally, uh, and that are meant to trigger you and to keep your anxiety and your stress high. There's too much of that, and we don't normally do. We just don't want to come home and then have to argue if something is pertinent with our wives. It's like, oh God, here we go. I know that feeling only too well, admittedly. But we like peace. We don't want to come back and then there's more conflict. Uh, and it is conflict, and it's uncomfortable because we're just tired. When I was working and I'd come back and we'd have to have a discussion about something important, and it doesn't have to be this huge thing, but we make it that big sometimes because we're bringing that stress back. And then there's a lot of times where we don't have a whole lot to say, or we're trying to spare somebody's feelings. And so then we shut down and we just agree with everything that you're saying. Um, and that is the truth. I mean, that is the truth for a lot of men, not all men, of course. Like I said before, I'm not going to blanket statement any of it. Now that's the challenging part. So we're going to get into the rewarding part, which is if you do man up and just face it, there's massive rewards. There's massive gains. She's gonna feel heard and understood. And obviously, you don't just agree and don't just and you're actually actively listening. Active listening, okay, is participating in the conversation, listening to what she's saying first and foremost, elaborating on what she's saying, clarifying, asking her clarifying questions, especially if there's something that you're not understanding, and then contributing to the conversation in a meaningful way, whether she has asked you a direct question or your opinion, and you give her an honest opinion, or if she's just asking for your honesty on a particular thing. Well, yeah, your opinion, but maybe your quote unquote professional insight, I should say, maybe something that something dealing with work, or maybe she feels like she's overreacting to a particular situation at work or between or with her family members, and you give her the God's honest truth, the way that you see it from the outside, with the information that you gleaned from what she said. Uh, and sometimes it could be upsetting to her, but then you're going to get past it. Or maybe it's not upsetting. I mean, it could go whichever way. Um, and it's not always bad, but she's going to feel safer. She's going to feel heard. She's going to feel like you're part of the relationship and the conversation, and that's then that she can talk to you. So those are all those are actually they're very rewarding, and you know not because you're trying to limit the confrontation later on. It's going to happen regardless whether you like it or not. But but yeah, that's some of the rewarding aspects of it. So you had a little bit of challenging, you had a little bit of rewarding right there for you. This whole monologue of mine is just going to delve into the significance of men defining their roles, the importance of setting these boundaries, the art of communicating, which I'm still figuring out myself. I actually have some data here. I'm gonna examine some of it. All right, I'm gonna have links to it. I'm gonna have references to it at the end in the or down in the description rather. So I hope you glean some sort of information from this, like I did when I was doing the research, and I've been writing this thing. And I've actually funny thing. I actually the first time that I recorded this, and I was trying to go back through to see if there were any real long pauses. I'm one that's I'm very conscious about how much I'm pausing, how many filler words that I'm using. I know it can be a bit distracting, and I'm trying to get better at articulating what I'm saying, being mindful and thoughtful about what I'm saying so I can get the information across to you, but also not distract you with all of the unnecessary words and off-putting, how do you say, off-putting mannerisms that I have sometimes, or that a lot of us do, especially when we're trying to gather our thoughts in a cohesive manner, in a calculated way, especially when we're presenting information. You could be as prepared as the next person, but there are going to be hiccups sometimes. It's inevitable, and I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. So if you go back to some of my older videos, there's one of the fillers. I'm not trying to there it is. I'm not trying to pinpoint your focus on stuff like that, but I do realize that I do it sometimes. But I hope you stick around, okay? So the importance of establishing clear roles. Traditionally, societal norms have ascribed, prescribed specific roles to men and women within relationships. That has all been societal and religion and or religious. That these roles have been quote unquote assigned to us, and that's kind of taken away. And when I was doing the research on that, it started to make a whole ton of sense how how women or men feel, um, or maybe certain races of people or whatever the case may be. They feel so strongly about their independence because society has placed some of these roles between men and women. Like, this is how men act, this is how women act. And while there are traits that are specific to men and women biologically, at the cellular level, and all of these good things, that doesn't mean that there are not traits that we both kind of share. And it's just a coin toss. It's all about communicating, who would like to take on this role. Maybe we split it in half. That's become a thing now, and I feel like it's overcorrected. But we're not going to get to we're not going to go into that. as gender roles have evolved, there's a need for couples to define their roles based on mutual understandings. So that should be trumping societal expectations. So what regardless of what society says we should be doing, the mutual understanding, having a conversation. I'm probably gonna hit this pretty hard this entire podcast. So for us men, as I mentioned this earlier, actively participating in discussions about the role distribution. Roles doesn't have to specifically mean a specific task we're trying to complete, like remedial or what are they, menial tasks around the house. Like those can be interchanged here and there. If something is amiss in the kitchen, I don't want to hear you complain about it. Now, if it's a consistent thing, that's fine. Like one example is one example, and I do this sometimes. I was really good about not doing it, and I've been in the kitchen so much cooking and doing random stuff that she's hardly really ever in there. So I don't think about it. I'm going to return and squeeze and wring out the sponge. But the one time I'm not, I go off to do something else, and I'm going to return because maybe I'm letting something soak or something. Is the one time that she is in the kitchen and she sees it. And it's not the one time. She had started to go in there to do other stuff, and she said, "You're doing this a lot." And I'm just sitting there like, in my head I'm thinking, "Man, you just started going into the kitchen again, like and this is what you're finding. Good God." But anyway, I've been more aware of that. I've been ringing it out every single time I use it, just to make it a habit again of not doing of not leaving of not introducing that kind of it's a meaningless conflict, really. She's just bringing it up to my attention. But so it's not really, conflict per se, but it can be an annoyance or an irritation. And I understand it. There are little things that she does that get on my nerves, but that's not household chores kind of stuff. So hey, what can you do? So I'm gonna talk to you here real quick, real quick about a study that was done that was published in the Economic Journal, and that's the name of it, Economic Journal. And this will be down in the description, of course. It highlighted that. I'm gonna read this to you. In egalitarian societies like Sweden, hey, check that out. Traditional roles still influence relationship dynamics. I think I'm gonna pause right there. I'll keep reading. I think some traditional roles are probably pretty good. That could be controversial, but I think some of them are good, and some of them some people like and some people want, and that's okay too. But I think the dynamics should be fluid. It should be malleable if need be. Because if you're too rigid, and you see how that happens, one example of that rigidity can be, say somebody has forced, and I'm Catholic, all right? I'm not against religion, but this is just an example, and I had seen this several times when I was growing up. When you're forcing your children to go to church every single Sunday and follow exactly what you followed to the end of time, while faith and religion, it's an important cornerstone for moral. And I'm not saying that that it's the end all be all and that it's got all the answers or any of that stuff, and that it's the most moral religion or book in the entire world. But Catholicism and religion and faith can give people a sense of purpose and meaning, and a higher power, and a sense of moral obligation to the people around them if they take the real meanings from the scriptures. But love thy neighbor and all that good stuff. But I do also think that some people force that kind of stuff on their children, and they force, whether your intentions are good or bad or whatever, they force these ideals on these kids in not the healthiest of ways. So what happens? We as human beings, I feel, really tend to resist being told what to do or being forced to do something, and being told from time to time. Guilty. So then that actually pushes them in a different direction. So it's good. There's good and bad things to it. Just depends on how it's implemented, right? I think we can agree on something like that. So let's get back to it. The research indicated that a wife earning more than her husband could increase the likelihood of his unhappiness. Ugh, it cuts deep because it's probably true. It's true. It's true. It's not probably. It is true. We as men have always thought we're the breadwinners, and we have been throughout time, up until the recent like half a century. Exposing underlying traditional gender roles even in progressive societies. This underscores the importance of openly discussing and redefining roles to align with contemporary values and individual preferences. Society's changed. Society has evolved, and we have a lot more freedom. We have a lot more information at our fingertips. We can do a lot more as a society in general, but also the genders have come to a more of an equal playing field. And that's what that article's saying. And it's right about men feeling inadequate. Wait, hang on. Men feeling inadequate. Oh, it increases our unhappiness. Well, okay. So yeah, it does. I don't know if it's it I don't I guess in a way, yeah, a little bit, but it's almost depressing, and it's almost like, what good are we men? What good are we men? We want to be able to be traditionally, like I said, we've been the breadwinners, but also we want we really want our wives to rely on us for stuff like that, especially if that's how you grew up traditionally. So now women are making a lot more, they're in higher positions of power, which is great. There's nothing, I mean, that's outstanding. But and there are certain areas and careers that, of course, women are still, lagging behind men. I didn't get the statistics on that. Okay, you'd have to look that up. I know there are certain career fields that women are more prone to going towards. So, like, for example, if you go across the board, women have basically caught up to and surpassed men in a lot of areas. Seriously. There are only a few places where women are lagging behind men still, but I don't particularly think this could be controversial to some people, but it's fine. I mean, if you disagree with me, that's cool. Put it in the comment section. But there are also jobs that women are not really readily willing to do as opposed to men. That's a statistic and it's normally physical jobs. I'm not saying women are not strong or don't want to do physical things, but biologically men are stronger, and men are usually more willing to do the manual labor. It is just what it is. So in that particular category and aspect, and jobs that include physical labor like that, then yeah, there's going to be a disparity. So and there's a lot more tech jobs and marketing jobs coming out and stuff like that. which I feel like women are a little more prone to leaning towards those kinds of jobs. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's probably the case in most. That's probably most cases. But yeah, women have been earning more. That's kind of put us at a weird spot as men, and we're still catching up, still trying to adjust. It's nothing against you. It's nothing against women. I promise you. We're just trying to find a lot of men. I think I've talked about this in other episodes, but a lot of men have lost purpose, and we're trying to find some way to overcome that and find new purpose, find a different purpose, so that way we can contribute to the relationships in a more meaningful way. So let's move on to the next one. Boundaries, setting boundaries. We are not super outstanding at that sometimes. Because of this shift, we are not trying to say the wrong things. We're trying to appease you sometimes, a lot of times. So setting our boundaries is it for me. Sometimes it's unknown territory. I don't know how to say things without. Sometimes I don't know how to say things without not saying the wrong things, but saying what I mean in the way I'm intending it to mean. And when I when I get uncomfortable and I get a little irritated or frustrated, I tend to get I either tend to shut down or just agree. And it sounds really bad, but that's what I tend to do a lot of times. And I'm really starting to kick that habit. I'm realizing that it's just causing more harm than good. So, but we tend to shut down, or we tend to try and appease you, especially if we could see where the conversation's going. Not all men do this, but some do. But setting these and it's to our detriment, because setting these boundaries serve as guidelines that individuals set to define acceptable behaviors and interactions within a relationship. So if you want your wife to respect you more, then have that uncomfortable conversation. Set those boundaries. She's gonna do women speak their mind a lot of times. She's gonna tell you. She's gonna tell you what those boundaries are. At least my wife does. She didn't have any problem telling me or telling anybody really. So for us men, understanding and respecting both our own boundaries and those of our wives it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. So a survey. Here we go. There's some more data for you. Survey involving 2,000 sexually active adults explored bedroom boundaries in relationships, revealing diverse opinions on what constitutes cheating. Significant findings include that 51% consider harmless flirting, 60% chatting with an ex, and 23% watching porn as potential relationship breakers. These statistics highlight the varying perceptions of boundaries and the necessity for couples to discuss and establish mutual agreements to prevent misunderstandings. Sounds like it should be pretty obvious, but there are some people that try and circumvent that. Chatting with an ex, harmless flirting. There's no harmless flirting. There's not. There's just not. And pornography. Oof. That's yeah. I read something else. I don't have it with me, but I read something about the percentage of young men that it's more prevalent in men. Obviously, we're you know especially as young boys, as teenagers and young boys. It's like it if you're trying to stop your kid from, I mean, you just can't have any electronics whatsoever, and even then, it's almost impossible from that for them to not get their hands on stuff like that, like pornography. It's to as men as males, it's to our detriment that pornography is even a thing. I kicked pornography to the curb a long time ago, and I got to tell you this: I my expectations for sex, my own performance, my wife, it's completely changed. I had this predisposed idea of what women wanted and what I wanted as a man and a woman, and all of that stuff is just it's a fairy tale. And when I look back at it, it's just it's gross. To me it is. Some people genuinely, some men and women genuinely, and relationships genuinely like porn, and I mean that's fine for them, but generally speaking, it's to your own mental and physical and emotional detriment, in my opinion. Of course, that's not statistics. I'm just that's what I think. uh, oh gosh, it's crazy. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next article here. Furthermore, the concept of man keeping, in quotations, where women take on the emotional burdens of their male partners, adds to their already significant mental load. Women, I don't know how women do it. My wife does this. She thinks about like a million things in a day. It's my I explained to my life coach. It's like, and I don't think I'm the only one I feel like maybe I heard it, or I'm not the only one that has thought of it like this or explained it like this, but I feel like women, just like on my wife's phone, on her iPhone, she's got her all of these apps open and they're all running in the background, and she just kind of ran. I mean, or like the internet tabs. It's like something's loading in the background. You don't know where the music's coming from or something like that. And I'm just like that. I feel like that is her. I don't understand. I mean, I have to focus on what's in front of me. I've been writing. I've been getting a lot better about writing my schedule down for the day, planning ahead, marking stuff off as I go. But I can't be and I and I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it has anything to do with me being overwhelmed mentally. It's just I have to focus on something to get it done. However long it takes, I need to get it done. And I've already thought about it beforehand. I've already considered how I'm gonna do it, all these little things, but I need to get it done. I need to get it done right. I obsess about it. When I focus my mind on something that I really want, I can be obsessive. The gym was one thing a long time ago, and I had to focus on it. But women can think and feel all these things all at once, and it's the wildest thing to me. It still doesn't make any sense. I would really have liked to conduct some sort of a test, some sort of an experiment on women in general, that how they have all these internet tabs open in their mind and their brain, and they're processing. They might need like a liquid cooling system to process everything that's going on in their head. This trend emphasizes the need for men to be aware of their emotional responsibilities and to set boundaries that prevent over reliance on their partners for emotional support. Sharing responsibilities and setting healthy boundaries can prevent burnout and promote mutual respect. Now, women are amazing creatures. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I know this is a channel for men, or this part of the channel is for men, but I don't know how they do it. They keep all the internet tabs open. They bleed once a week out of the month, and they don't die. And they've got all the hormones going on, so there's all sorts of different emotions, and those are probably just tabs also, or those are part of the tabs that are open too. It's amazing to me. So and I get that. Any sort of way that we can contribute to lessening their emotional burden, to lessening, to taking on some of the mental strain, or even just relieving the emotional burdens. We'll just say that for now. Try and start somewhere, right? Trying to relieve some of those emotional burdens, being proactive rather than reactive. That's something that I'm working so freaking hard on, and it's hard. It's like I said, I have to focus on one thing at a time. I cannot have, and it might be that way forever, but that is how I function. That's how I get anything done. Otherwise, it's a mess. It would be way worse. But she'll respect you a lot more for your effort and consideration and just trying to take something off of her plate. Women have a lot on their plate, man, fellas. Uh, and there's a lot of times we forget. Even when you're conscious about it, there are going to be times where you forget, and those are the exact times that she's gonna burn you on it. So try and be mindful about stuff like that. But also, that doesn't. So I'm thinking in my head right now. I'm coming to the realization. So yeah, try and take some of that off of her, while also still having your boundaries observed and met, and those needs met. Because let me tell you what. Let me tell you why. Because when you start to appease her and everything, and then you start just focusing on that, then you stop focusing inwardly on yourself, and that lead and once you start to realize that, that can lead to resentment. That can lead to, well, like, why does she, like, I feel like I'm just constantly having to think about her and this and that. That's the kind of dynamic that you're going to have. That's the kind of shift you're going to have in your thinking and your thought processes, and you don't want that. I've been there before, and it sucks. And I realized it too late. I came out and told her about it. I felt really bad, but I had to be honest. I was like, look, there are times I would come home from work and I wouldn't want to go inside. I had so much resentment and feelings and all sorts of things just pent up that I didn't really talk about until it became too much. And that is not good for anybody. And it wasn't to make her feel bad, but it was to communicate and try and get us somewhere where some sort of semblance of sanity, because it's going off the rails. So before it gets to that point, it, you know, this leads me into the next thing. Effective communication. This is the heartbeat. This is what I was telling you earlier. It's a linchpin of relationships. It's the conduit through which your partners express needs, desires, concerns. For men, honey, we I can't. Some men are good at it. Some men are, I feel like, are naturals, and maybe they didn't start that way, but some of them I feel like have their stuff together a lot more than other men. Uh, but that's because they've practiced. For men, honing our communication skills, it's vital in setting these boundaries and establishing roles. Without effective communication, and I feel like I could talk about communication almost every single episode, and I feel like I probably will at least once, but because I'm still learning it, I'm still trying to fine tune it, trying to figure out how to implement it to take her feelings into consideration, but also not. what's the word? I don't want to compromise my boundaries either, and then just acquiesce and that's it. Because, like I said before, that builds resentment. You have to be open and honest. And then if you do butt heads a little bit, that's fine. That's part of communication. Because she's going to respect you more. She's going to want to talk to you more. She's going to want to meet your needs and expectations more. But if you're just agreeing with her and not telling her how you're truly feeling, then you're doing a disservice to you and her and the relationship in general, and that's going to come back to bite you in the butt, guaranteed. here's here's an article right here for you. The expectancy violations theory, EVT, posits that individuals have expectations about others' behaviors and violations of these expectations can impact relationship dynamics. In the context of intimate relationships, unexpected behaviors, whether positive or negative, can influence perceptions and satisfaction. For instance, I'm going to get through this and then we'll talk about it. For instance, uncharacteristic relational behavior, such as a sudden demand for a romantic relationship in a platonic friendship, can lead to discomfort and reevaluation of the relationship. Understanding and managing these expectations through open communication can strengthen relational bonds. So, in this particular article, or in this particular example and article rather, and you've seen, and I feel like you've seen that in movies. You have the platonic friend. Oh, it's just a friend, and this and that, and then they end up, one of them ends up catching feelings, and the other one's not feeling the same way. And the expectation, it wasn't expressed. It wasn't talked about. So then you had a breakdown. That's why I said it can lead to discomfort and reevaluation of the relationship. So this is like assuming. So you have expectations of somebody else and the way something's supposed to happen, but if you don't talk to them about it, then if you're rejected or if they feel uncomfortable or something along those lines, or they're not down with it, then you've shot yourself in the foot because it hasn't been talked about. It just came out of nowhere. You had this certain expectation because you felt like maybe it was going to be going somewhere, and then and they weren't expecting it. It's like you threw them a curveball from the opposite hand. So really, effective communication. That's where that would have played the biggest role in in a situation like that. It's crazy. And oh, and by the way, assuming that, don't ever try and assume that your partner is feeling or will feel a certain way about something. You won't know unless you talk to them. So one example of this is I we my wife and I had gone to visit my family in Texas, and I'm a big proponent of cryptocurrency. This is going to be a seemingly small example, but I had been wanting to invest in, I don't know if you've heard of it, but Solana. And at the time, this is about a little over a year ago, I believe. At the time, it was around $10. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, I know it's going to go on a tear. I know it is. And my wife's in charge of of budgeting. She looks at everything. So I'm just thinking in my head the entire trip basically is, if I could just invest like $2,000 into this, I know it's going to be worth it. Like, it's going to be insane how much money we could potentially make from this for, and just elevate ourselves even more with it. So long story short, I didn't. I didn't. I didn't. And sure enough, I think about 2 months later, a month or two later, it went on a massive tear. It jumped from $10 to $80. It dropped down to 60, and then it jumped up again to around 160. And I was just thinking to myself, if I had just talked to her, because I talked to her afterwards. I said, man, I really want to invest. I really wanted to invest in this, and it went from 10 to 160. And she said, well, why didn't you? And I was like, well, I didn't think you were going to be okay with it. She's like, well, you never asked. So that assuming just doesn't get you anywhere. If I would have just talked to her, it would have been like a 10 or 18x on that $2,000, and even more now. But I mean, just that's just, and I know that's, just that has to do with money and stuff. But I assumed that she would not be on board with it, instead of just talking to her and setting, and just the expectation was going to be that she was going to shoot it down. In my head, I was playing everything out in my head rather than just talking to her about it. So, it's I laugh about it because I really like hurt my own feelings a little bit about it. So, let's move on. Self-disclosure. And then we'll conclude. Self-disclosure, the act of revealing personal information, plays a significant role in building intimacy. I can attest to this. I can attest to this. If you're constantly, and I don't know, I for myself, I don't particularly like talking about personal information, per, personal things. But as I've gotten a little bit older, I've realized that it's just, one, it's inevitable, and two, it's healthy. It just is. So opening up, and I believe I've said this in another episode, but regardless of if they try and use your own emotions against you later on, if maybe y'all have a falling out or whatever, not that that's going to happen, but you know that you put yourself out there, so you've got no regrets. You may regret telling her and she's using against you for that short amount of time, but don't be ashamed to do it. And if that is the case later on in life, or in the relationship, whatever, if y'all go your separate ways, just know that if she's using that, then that just says a lot more about her character. It says that she really lacks sympathy, empathy, and it's more than likely some hypocritical crap. Okay. In marriages, higher levels of self-disclosure have been linked to greater marital satisfaction. The more she knows about you, the more intimately she knows you, the more she sees you vulnerable, the more satisfaction you're going to have. She's going to be a lot happier about it, because there's a piece of you there's a piece of you that maybe you haven't told anybody else. Only she knows. And she's the caretaker of that, right? That's a little part of you. That's just between y'all. However, it's essential to balance the depth and breadth of disclosures, as sharing too much negative information can decrease satisfaction. Men who actively engage in self-disclosure contribute to a more profound sense of intimacy and understanding within the relationship. So when I was reading that initially, and what I took out of it was, tell her about some of the personal things that you've got going, that maybe you haven't told anybody else, or that maybe you feel comfortable telling now at this particular point in time, telling her. But don't disclose too much negative stuff, really, or maybe don't not all at once, because that's kind of it's kind of a downer. It's an emotional overload, and it's they may not they kind of want to know some of the more. A lot of times it's more personal, but information that makes you look a little more vulnerable. And it sounds like you're more like you have opened up you've opened up your emotions rather. And negative talks, like don't put yourself down. Negative talk, negative negativity about yourself is just, ugh. It's pretty unattractive. I will say that. So one aspect that I will say before I conclude, let me jump into this real quick. Is if you're a conflict avoider, like I'm getting a lot better. I can tell you that. I was a conflict avoider, but avoiding it is gonna stress both of y'all out. It's gonna increase your loneliness. You're gonna feel like you're lonely. Uh, that's gonna reduce relationship satisfaction. So if you ever butt heads, try and keep it calm, cool, and collected. Be mindful of her feelings, but also be firm in your own boundaries. So tell her the truth. Okay, don't just sate her don't just sate whatever or don't tell her what you think she wants to hear. That's what I meant to say. Tell her the God honest truth, what you think. Okay, and if there's conflict, then hash it out. Okay, in a respectful way. So, establishing clear roles. We're going to conclude it here. I'm pretty sure you're tired of hearing me talk. Establishing clear roles, setting boundaries, and fostering that effective communication, that linchpin I was telling you about. They're intertwined elements. They form the bedrock of healthy relationships. I cannot stress that enough. For us men, actively engaging in these processes, it requires us being willing to be open, self aware, and being adaptable. So sometimes I do, and then I have to catch myself. But you know, if y'all are having an unforeseen conflict, you're gonna have to take a step back. If you feel yourself getting irritated, it's showing on your face. I'm bad about that too. Take a step back, reassess, then engage. You have to engage with a rational mind. Otherwise, it's going to go off the rails pretty quick. So, this was a good one. I really enjoyed this one. Remember, stay mindful. And then if you are one piece of advice is if you are feeling that way, maybe she asks you a question you're not ready for. A question that just came out of nowhere that you hadn't even thought about. Just it's okay to take it to tell her like, "Hey, do you mind giving me a minute so I can formulate a response?" Or this is okay too. I haven't thought about that. Do you mind if I do you mind if I ruminate? We could say ruminate maybe. Is it ruminate? You mind if I take a little bit and then I can get back to you? Because I'm not exactly sure what my viewpoint is or what my opinion is or what I haven't thought about it. I need a little bit of time to think about it. And I will get back to you. It's totally fine. Totally fine. Don't just say, "Oh yeah," and then right off the cuff. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say because I was pretty bad about that. Be mindful, be rational, take a step back if you need to, be flexible and adaptable. and be willing to be open. Communicate, 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 fellas. Well, I hope you gleaned something from today's episode. This was a good one. It was a doozy. I enjoyed it. I think I did a little bit better with the fillers. You just let me know what you think. I hope it helps. If it has, just let me know. This is a place for us to just have a conversation. These are just my thoughts. Some of them are shower thoughts. Some of them are just something I think about throughout the day as a as either I'm going through it or I've been through it, and I'm like, well, this is a topic that I think I can talk about, and hopefully it helps, because that's all I'm here to do is to help. Hopefully somebody open up open up, or just take a step towards adding to their tool belt for their mental and emotional sake, because I know us men need it sometimes. And if you ever need to reach out to me personally, then go ahead. I'm always here to listen if you need me to listen, or just or if you maybe need an opinion on something, I'm glad to give you one. I don't know if it's the one you're going to want to hear, but this was a good one. I appreciate y'all coming. I look forward to the next one. I'm working on it right now. I'm working on the script, and I'm working on the references. So up here, you're going to see the last video I did on the weekly men's mental health. So go check that out if you haven't already. I hope you subscribe. I hope you have a great rest of your week. It's the middle of the week. It's going to be nice out there. So until the next one, I'm looking forward to it. Y'all have a great week. Take care. Bye.